basically with the external nares, which are for our purposes the nostrils, or the mouth, right? You can breathe through your nose or your mouth. It's more efficient to breathe through your nose. Why?
Warms the air.
Warms the air first. You also drag through nasal sinuses, which grab stuff, and nose hairs, which actually filter crap out as well. So if I go into the mouth here, and this cat isn't quite as nicely cut as the other one, so I might just get that out. Anyway, basically the whole back in here is showing the pharynx. It's just the back of the throat, right? The opening is the pharynx. So you go from the nose or the mouth to the pharynx. And then to this structure, which is this whole thing right here, is the larynx, which is supported by that hyoid bone, which doesn't articulate to any other bones there. We have here is this is kind of, it's been broken off here, but this is the epiglottis, which function is to fold over and block the glottis, which is the entryway into the trachea, as opposed to going down the esophagus, which you can see right here. So esophagus, soft, smooth muscle; trachea, rigid, cartilaginous. Right. So surrounding the glottis, we have internally are the true vocal cords, right, which are basically right here. They're just those innermost folds, and externally are the false vocal cords here and here. Okay, and that's the whole thing is the larynx. Right. So we go down into the thoracic cavity here. You can see the heart, or lungs. One of the lungs has been removed here. Not sure where it went. Oh, here it is. So one thing that's a little bit difficult to see here is the primary bronchi. So if we follow our trachea down, it should split into two branches. Now I thought the reason they had this cat out was that this was the good cat that had better bronchi than the other one. That's not the case. However, if we pull the heart aside, oh, these lungs have been completely mangled. So I can't find our primary bronchi here, but you guys should know that just the point at which the trachea branches into two, each one of those branches is a primary bronchi, or bronchus, forming the two primary bronchi. A structure we haven't looked at yet is the phrenic nerve, which, again, I'm not seeing it on this cat. You find the phrenic nerve basically against the spinal column behind the heart and lungs, and its purpose is basically supplying innervation of the diaphragm to keep you breathing. And since I'm not seeing it here, I'm just going to go ahead and grab our other cat. I don't know who's messing around with cats, but
Taking revenge. Their family came back to get them. Proper burial.
It's the ghost of the cat that died here 3 years ago today.
Can you like donate your cat to science?
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, they did a cat.
For what? Like if no one adopt them?
Then they donate them to nobody adopts you. They can't keep them forever. Yeah. It's like dogs. I think it'd be worse.
What's his name?
I think that was our Yeah, that's the face.
Aww. It's
Oh
Tommy's
yeah, it's
out.
missing the teeth in the front. This is Lydia.
Well, it depends what kind of dog.
They look different.
Lydia looks roughed up.
Alright.
Love it smell in the morning.
Okay.
Good, right here.
Just find which side it's on.
Soulmates.
So it's small.
But they're not using them. I explained it.
Not like that.
Oh gosh, it's on outside.
Oh.
No, still doesn't have one.
I'm not seeing it here.
Just tell him not to like put this one on his face.
Okay, so here it comes up to here as well. So this is our phrenic nerve.
I get spray tans. I got spray tan yesterday.
I'm gonna move.
Did you
Okay.
have one?
You go.
Like, you kind of like a series.
You can, okay.
All right, so keep in mind what a nerve looks like. You guys remember the nerves from the previous exam. There's only one nerve in this entire practical. That's the phrenic nerve. So if I ever pin anything that looks like a nerve, you know it's the phrenic nerve. All right, so don't worry too much about that one, even though it's hard to find.
Does that one have the primary black eye?
Yeah, but not super well. So you can just see that this is the lung. This is the point at which the trachea is going into the lung. So the primary bronchus in this case is right there. The other one is this right there.
Okay.
Okay. Alright. So then we have our diaphragm, which is this guy right here. Remember, in its relaxed state, it's got that arc in it. And then when you are basically inspiring, so inhaling, it contracts to flatten out like that, which as you can see, there's not a lot of space in the thoracic cavity as opposed to when that contracts, makes more space in there. Okay, which causes the lungs to inflate. Makes sense? Let's see if I can find the lower reaches of the phrenic nerve, but not too worried about it. It should be right up against the backbone typically, but it's possible that it got ripped out. It's not super strong. All right. So that is, that's actually basically all of respiration except for a couple things. One thing I didn't mention at all last time were the visceral and parietal peritoneum and the visceral and parietal pleura. All right. Peritoneum refers to basically the abdominal cavity. Pleura refers to the thoracic cavity. And you have, for all these, you have a visceral and a parietal pleura. So visceral is referring to the organs, all right? So in all these cases, all of the organs, in this case you don't see it very well, but these organs were first covered in like a really thin, shiny layer, similar to like the pia mater, right? Covering all that. And that would be the visceral pleura. And then if you look kind of like, it's not a good one for the pleura up here, but there's actually another fine layer that was covering everything. So the visceral is like a layer that's over the individual organs themselves, whereas the parietal pleura is a layer that's basically holding all those together like a bag holding it all in. And that gets torn off really easily as we're opening. It's just a really thin layer. Similarly down here, everything is covered in a fine visceral peritoneum. And then you can see like right here, like this layer, right? It's branching off from here, and then you can see it's actually stuck onto here as well. This is parietal peritoneum, okay? Does that make sense? Just a layer of connective tissue that covers everything. And the visceral peritoneum is a much thinner layer that's over the individual organs themselves. You guys want to go over digestion as well really quick while we're here? All right, so first thing we hit on the other side of the diaphragm is the liver. This little satchel of death right here is the gallbladder. All right, but from the esophagus passes through the diaphragm, and it meets the stomach right here, the cardiac sphincter. That's the point at which we have stomach meeting esophagus. Down on the and inside the stomach, I'm not sure if our worm is still in here, but we have rugae, which are the ridges in there. And then over on this end, which is it's counterintuitive because it kind of comes upward, but we have the end of the stomach. This whole region is called the pylorus, and so right here we have where it meets the small intestine, the pyloric sphincter. And what's this first stretch of the small intestine called? The duodenum, where the majority of digestion occurs. We have secretion of bile from the gallbladder. We have bile ducts. We also have hepatic ducts from the liver going into the duodenum right here. And then if we flip back this thing right here, we can actually see the pancreas. It's right here, which is also connecting into the small intestine. And what is that secreting? Pancreatic juices, which are a variety of enzymes, are basically things that will activate enzymes via those brush border enzymes, right? Or they become activated by brush border enzymes. That makes sense? Things like enterokinase, which are in there, that basically interactions between those and the secretions of the pancreas are activating these really powerful digestive enzymes. What's this freaky dude here? Spleen. Right, and then next layer here is the jejunum, which is somewhere in the middle. You can see all these are held together by mesentery. All right. Last stretch is called the ileum, and where the ileum meets the colon is at the ileocecal valve right here, a robust valve basically to prevent feces from getting into the small intestine, or basically to prevent that enteric bacteria from getting into the small intestine, where it would potentially cause secondary infection. This little structure here is the cecum, site of additional digestion in some animals. All right, and then we have just a regular colon coming out here, proceeding down past the uterine horns, the urinary bladder, and the point at which we lose sight right here to here would be rectum, and then the actual orifice right there would be the anus. You guys all get a good look at that. All right, questions?
I guess, as far as what you said, that's pretty much like function-wise, and that.
So function-wise, I mean, in terms of respiration, it's all pretty straightforward. What's the function of the trachea? Well, it's just a tube for air to get to the lungs. It's the function of the lungs, basically to absorb as much air and oxygen as possible. Know where the heart is. Its function is just to move blood around. Diaphragm, its function is to ventilate the lungs, move them, fill them up with air, change the volume of the thoracic cavity. So that's the phrenic nerve, like I said, innervate the diaphragm. True vocal cord, vibrating to make sound, pretty straightforward. In terms of digestion, I think I mentioned function for pretty much everything as we went through, except for the greater omentum. Its function is just to kind of hold all the guts in place, right? In addition to that, visceral and parietal peritoneum. So, but otherwise, yeah, I think function for digestion is also pretty transparent there. Any questions? Anybody? Let me know if I should point anything else out. Anything you guys didn't get to see?